Hi, I'm Win, and welcome to another video by the Entropy system. When we started this channel 6 years ago, we were committed to bringing the most accurate and honest information that we could to our audience. But here's the thing, we're not mental health professionals, and as such, we're prone to make mistakes. Additionally, as research on DID and mental health continues, some things that were thought to be accurate in 2017 just aren't anymore. And that's why we decided to make the series, Did We Make a Mistake? Correcting and updating misinformation from our past videos. Today's video is going to be an update on one of our very first videos, the differences between DID and schizophrenia. So what is the difference between DID and schizophrenia? The short answer is everything, all of it. They're two completely different disorders. In fact, even with introductory understanding of either of them, you might wonder how they could get confused at all. And yet, according to a 2008 NAMI survey, 64% of respondents thought that split personalities was a symptom of schizophrenia. So what is it that has people so confused? One reason may be because we describe our symptoms similarly sometimes. A person with DID might talk about hearing the voices of their alters, which to an outsider could sound the same as a person with schizophrenia experiencing an auditory hallucination. An alter in a DID system describing themselves as being some kind of mythical creature like a fairy could sound to a layperson like a person with schizophrenia describing their delusions. However, the realities and experiences of these disorders could not be more different. So let's get into those differences. Our most recent video before this one was a deep dive into DID diagnostic criteria and treatment options. So if you want to hear what DID is in super intense detail, please be sure to check that out. But the shorthand of it is that DID can basically be diagnosed with these two symptoms: the presence of two or more identity states, or alters, and reoccurring memory gaps that go beyond what can be explained by just normal forgetfulness. It's also specified that these things can't be the result of things like commonly recognized religious practices or intoxication. Because current understanding of DID pegs it as a trauma disorder, there's oftentimes a lot of comorbidities with DID, so a lot of people with DID will experience things like PTSD, anxiety, depression. But those first two things are what make DID distinct from other trauma disorders like PTSD. The diagnosis of schizophrenia is a little bit more involved. To be diagnosed with schizophrenia according to the DSM-5, a person must have two or more of the following symptoms over a period of at least a month: delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech, grossly disorganized or catatonic behavior, and negative symptoms. And I'll get into what negative symptoms means in just a little bit. Additionally, one of the symptoms has to be from the first three on the list: hallucinations, delusions, disorganized speech. An episode of the disorder must last between 1 and 6 months, and of course none of the symptoms can be the cause of intoxication or another medical condition. So like I said, DID, schizophrenia, totally different disorders. But let's dive a little bit deeper into the symptoms of schizophrenia and see if we can help parse out why your average individual confuses these two. Delusions. A person with schizophrenia might experience delusions, which can be things like believing that there's a secret message just for them being spoken by a radio announcer, or perceiving some kind of threat from someone even if there is no actual threat nearby. When an alter in a DID system expresses things like identifying as a different age than the body, identifying as an animal, or having some other trait that is different from what an outsider can physically see, that alter often understands that that part of their identity is only existent in the headspace. They don't believe that their body in the outside world has these actual traits. When they understand that these traits are not manifested in the body when they come to the front, it's not a delusion. Hallucinations. Hallucinations can be auditory, visual, olfactory, gustatory, or tactile. That's quite a list of words. But auditory hallucinations are the most common. These are not medically described as unreal occurrences because they are very real for the person who's experiencing them. Instead, modern verbiage describes schizophrenic hallucinations as perceptions or perception-like experiences that are not perceived by anyone else. And these symptoms can often be managed with proper medication. That being said, while doing research for this video, I discovered that there's actually a movement of people who are trying to embrace auditory hallucinations and specifically befriend the voices that they hear. There's even a TED Talk about it. However, many professionals feel that this is a dangerous and counterproductive practice, especially if the voices are persecutory. People with DID will describe hearing the voices of their alters in their head, but it's a very different experience. Rather than hearing external voices coming from the outside, alter voices are heard internally. It's like there's an inner monologue, like a line of thought that doesn't quite belong to you and doesn't quite sound like you. And when we describe our alters as being close by, we are not visually seeing them in the room with us, but instead kind of feel an emotional bump that doesn't feel like it belongs to us, or some kind of energy, again, all internally, that belongs to that alter, and that's how we know. Disorganized symptoms. Disorganized symptoms include things like thought disorders and bizarre behavior. Disorganized thinking can manifest as being rambly, jumping from one topic to the other with seemingly no connection, thinking you're answering a question, but actually the words you're saying have nothing to do with the question being asked. Or in extreme situations, a person can be completely incomprehensible using just random words when they talk. We all do this. Everybody does this at some point when you're tired, when you're excited, when you're distracted. It's the severity that makes it a symptom of schizophrenia. The bizarre behaviors portion of this can include things like childlike silliness, agitation, or inappropriate conduct or hygiene. In extreme cases, this can also include catatonia, so just complete physical shutdown. The childlike silliness part of this could be confusing for an outsider. When a DID system has a child alter fronting, it could look very similar, but again, these experiences are very different. Negative symptoms. So now we're back to that negative symptom thing I said I was going to explain earlier. Symptoms that we've talked about so far, hallucinations, delusions, they add something to the experience of the person with schizophrenia. They'd be considered positive symptoms. Negative symptoms take things away. They diminish or completely take away normal function and affect, and can manifest in ways like failing to express emotion, extreme social withdrawal, or complete lack of motivation. None of these being diagnosable symptoms for DID. So now we've explained how they're super different, but I do momentarily want to touch on something that there can be overlapping in experiences, even if the disorders are very different. And of course, this could make distinguishing the two disorders from the position of an outsider even more confusing. For example, I personally have experienced both hallucinations and delusions as the direct result of my DID. I had one alter believe for a period of time that she was my therapist, that she was a person who inhabited a different body than me and was not a part of my system, and was our full-time therapist. We also had an episode of hallucination that involved flashbacks, but like way more intense than what we were used to. And when we told our actual real life therapist about this, she said that while it's rare, she has seen other DID systems experience the same. Here's a video that talks about that specifically if you want to know more detail. But hallucination and delusion are, of course, not diagnosable parts of DID, and not every system is going to experience them. In fact, most probably aren't. Similarly, a person with schizophrenia can absolutely experience dissociation, derealization, or depersonalization. I mean, almost everybody does at some point in their life. But dissociation is not a diagnosable part of schizophrenia, and may not be experienced by everyone who has it. Now, terminology can be confusing. The verbiage we use to describe our experiences can be confusing. But honestly, I don't think that's the biggest reason why the general public confuses DID and schizophrenia. I personally think that the biggest reason, the biggest contributor to this, is because of popular media. Movies and books and games pretty regularly lump these two disorders together as some generic spooky murder thing. It paints us as people to be feared, as people completely out of touch with reality and destined to cause extreme harm. Not only have they used our symptoms and disorders interchangeably, but they've painted us as villains. If your only context for DID or schizophrenia is go crazy, think you're someone else, stab a person, then yeah, sure, why wouldn't you get them mixed up? It is so important that we start having conversations about how people with these disorders are just that. People. Feeling afraid of our diagnosis, feeling afraid of what other people will think about us, being afraid just of ourselves lessens the chance that we'll be open about our experiences and seek help, and that absolutely inhibits our ability to heal at all. If you think a therapist is going to lock you up or your friends are going to be afraid of you and run away, why would you tell anybody what you're going through? A lot of people with schizophrenia and DID will minimize or ignore or misreport their symptoms for this exact reason. And as we all know, trying to suppress things about your reality, be it disorders or identity or even just emotions, really never works out for anybody. At the end of the day, we're human. Some of our experiences may differ from the majority of the population. We're not crazy. We're not monsters. We're just people. If you'd like to do more reading on either of these disorders, I put links to the resources that I used for this video in the description below. And remember, no matter where you are, no matter what you're going through right now, you are loved, you are valuable, and you are valid. We'll see you next time.